Happy holidays, everybody. You've probably heard a lot about the potential changes in the tax code. I've received a number of calls and emails asking what these possible changes are and what they could mean. That's what I'd like to discuss with you today over the next several minutes. In order to change the current tax system, you already know that both houses of Congress have to vote in favor of those changes. And this is really important, and I'm going to circle back to that in a couple of minutes because the process has a lot to do with it. The plans in the House and the Senate are a little different, but they're mostly in line with each other, and their stated goal is to cut taxes and make the code much simpler. President Trump sent his tax proposal to Congress in late September, and the House, after going back and forth, they passed their own version of the tax bill on November 16th. The Senate could vote on their version of the bill as early as Thursday of this week. And if their bill does pass the Senate, it would then go to a conference where the House and the Senate bills would try to be reconciled. Let's talk about what's in those plans as they stand right now. So here's an overview of the most important changes as I see them that this tax reform plan offers. First, income tax brackets. The House plan offers to reduce the number of brackets from 7 to 4 and to reduce the tax rates permanently. The Senate plan keeps the current 7 brackets in place and lowers tax rates, but those reductions only stay in place until 2025 when they revert back to the current schedule. Both plans eliminate itemized deductions other than for charitable contributions, some mortgage interest, some property taxes, and retirement contribution. But here's the thing that most people get a little bit confused because the media makes it a little bit difficult to really understand. If you already have a mortgage, these proposed changes don't impact you. The plan coming out from the House only limits deducting interest for new mortgages over $500,000. And the Senate plan limits deductions for mortgages over $1 million. And again, both of those are only for new mortgages, not for existing mortgages. Now, the Senate plan eliminates the deduction for home equity line interest completely. The House gets rid of the deduction for medical expenses that are 10% or more of income. And the Senate plan keeps that deduction in place. On the other hand, and here's an item that's sure to cause a lot of concern for people in California, New York, and New Jersey. Both the Senate and the House want to limit the state and local tax deduction. The House plan would keep the deduction for state and local taxes, but only up to $10,000. And the Senate plan gets rid of the state and local tax deduction for individuals, but keeps it in place for businesses only. Now, if you've got a school loan, you can say goodbye to any deduction you've been claiming for interest on those loans. And the standard deduction is doubled for everyone, so that's a good thing, but personal exemptions are done away with. Both plans double the exemption on estate tax, and the House plan calls for getting rid of estate taxes by the end of 2024. Also, both the Senate and the House plan gets rid of the AMT. Now, the Senate plan also calls for the repeal of the Obamacare tax penalty on those people who don't buy health insurance. And there are economic pros and cons to this, but President Trump has already said that he'd get rid of that provision if it would help pass the tax code bill. So it seems like that's really more of a bargaining chip than anything else. Let's talk about business taxes under these plans because that's really where the rubber meets the road. Under both plans, the maximum corporate tax rate drops from 35% to 20%. And now the Senate delays that reduction to 2019 while the House makes that effective immediately, or in 2018, excuse me. Also, both plans provide more deductions for investments in depreciable assets, and that in terms of in the year in which that investment is made, and that would be great for business, but that liberal provision is only in place for 5 years. And now here's a big change. Under the plans, the C corporations, according to the House plan, would not be able to deduct interest expense. That means they would find it much more expensive to borrow money. And that would hurt capital intensive industries like utilities and heavy manufacturing. And another problem with that would be it would make it very difficult for companies to borrow money and then buy back shares. And that's been a big part of what's been fueling the stock market. So that might hurt investors. Another big issue is the tax system for offshore profits. The new system would not tax foreign earned income for corporations, and it would encourage business to repatriate, to bring back a lot of that cash that's currently overseas. It would only charge them a low one-time tax rate. And if that passes, it could be a real shot in the arm for investment here in the United States. How this plan affects you, as I see it, the plan put forth by the Senate really favors business and focuses on that part of the economy and the tax code. And if you look out 10 years, the difference between who benefits corporations or taxpayers becomes even more pronounced. By 2027, individual tax rates would be higher than they are today, according to these plans. But for business taxes, they would still be lower. Both plans increase the deficit by almost $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. Now, there's an argument that lower taxes fuel greater investments and stimulate the economy. And it was proven during the Reagan era that in fact happened. But it may not be as powerful now, and here's why. During the Reagan era, the highest tax rate was 70% for individuals. And now tax rates are about half that much. So this reduction in tax rates may not be as effective as it was in the 80s. And that's according to numerous objective studies, or third-party studies at least. In short, to me, the current proposals would be very good for business and therefore good for people who own stocks. But I don't see huge benefits for taxpayers. The proposals could be better than the current system, but I'm not sure how significant those improvements are, and I'm not sure exactly who they would benefit. The thinking in Washington is probably that by helping business, consumers and taxpayers also benefit. And I think that could be true, but again, the question is how much will it really help? What happens next? Well, in order to become law, the Senate plan needs 51 votes, and it can't add more than $1.5 trillion to the national debt in the first 10 years. And it can't add any debt to the national debt after 10 years. And right now, the plan as presented in the Senate doesn't meet those hurdles. And if it doesn't meet those hurdles, it requires 60 votes to pass, and that's probably not going to happen. So the bottom line is the Senate plan will probably have to be reworked so it doesn't violate those rules. And again, even if the Senate plan does pass, and they get the votes, then the plan will have to go through committee to be reconciled with the House plan. And then it's got to be approved by both houses of Congress. And then it's got to be approved by the president. So there's a long way to go before anything significant really changes. And there's no certainty that anything significant will actually change. You're going to hear a lot in the news from the talking heads and people, telling you how dire the situation is if this changes or if it doesn't changes. And they'll be telling you the 5 things or the 10 things you need to do now in order to safeguard yourself against the coming tax changes. These kind of headlines get people interested because it taps into our fear. But if you really want to know what you should do in light of the proposed tax changes, the reality is you shouldn't do anything. You should stay alert, keep informed, but not take any drastic action. And I'll continue to help you keep informed of what's happening and what's going on. But nothing has changed yet, and there's no guarantee that anything really will change. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to continue to keep you updated on this and other events in the economy and other events as they impact investors. If you have questions, let me know. I look forward to connecting with you. Thanks. Have a great holiday season.